All set. Okay, I'd like to open our February 16th meeting, Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. The posted agenda kind of stands the way it is. We're going to be continuing most of what you see before you, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. I would like to hear a motion to approve the meeting notes that Jim has provided us with.
So moved, Edna.
Second, Melody.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I hope you've all had a chance to read the February 1st minutes that Gretchen distributed. Could I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Melody.
Second, Kathy.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have to wait for a couple minutes. The first three public hearings that we have here, Parsons, Marriott, and Barrett, are going to be continued. But I think technically we have to wait till 6:35 to do that, I think. Does anyone have any thing that would come under correspondence and announcements that they'd like to share with the board? Okay.
Do you want to jump to the zoning, the sign permit?
Let's do that. This is for Dell's. As you can see, they're putting the sign in the same place, downlit, but they are changing the wording. I don't know. I think basically they want to continue with the existing characteristics of the existing sign, which doesn't meet the current code. Therefore, they're asking for a couple of variances to permit them to basically put the sign where the existing sign is, and it's really not any larger, but that's what the three variances are. And I personally don't see any problem with that myself. But anyone have anything I'd like to say to this at this point?
Well, I would only like to offer that the whole sign, the whole Dell's renovation application that we reviewed, part of it was based on the same, not the same sign, but the sign of the same size in that location.
Correct.
So what has resulted, which I think has been a great improvement in terms of traffic circulation and the use of the property and accessibility, I don't see the change in the sign impacting that at all. As a matter of fact, I think it complements it. And, you know, I wouldn't want to go back and start thinking about the site plan at this point. I think it's to some extent cleaner and more readable.
Okay. And any other thoughts, other members of the planning board?
Well, I drove down the road the other day and Dairy Cream already screams at you. It's really quite large. Dell's is even larger. I mean, is it really necessary to shout it that loud?
I think it's a change in identity. And my impression was that's what they were driving toward, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Granted, people are usually zipping along this section of Route 9. I would assume basically it's to announce where it is. I think one thing we might want to speak to the owner about is the lighting right by the entrance is not terribly good. And at certain times of night when the lighting's not all that great outside, it's sometimes a little difficult to know exactly where the entrance is into their parking area. But any other thoughts about the size of the sign or the wording in the sign?
The sign structure is actually larger because the mounting for the lights is above the sign. I'm wondering if that's necessary. I mean, I understand the fixtures that they've chosen require mounting, you know, on the side of something. You can see on the design how they've done that, but then it requires bringing something even above the sign.
I think part of that, since it's supposed to be, this sign needs to be read from both sides, both the north and the south, and it also has to be downlit. So I think that the, some of the electrical work to put those downlit lights on there requires something above the sign itself to install those. If they were doing uplighting, which we don't allow, of course, they wouldn't have to do that. They could just place it below the existing, below the sign itself, a little bit lower down on the two legs there. But I think that given the sign, the lighting that they're using and the downlighting, I think they do require something up there to attach it to.
Well, they have all of the space in between the two sides of the sign to do something. In other words, they could mount on top of the sign rather than on the sides of something that sticks up above the sign.
Would you like to make any?
I was just gonna, whatever, just add my general opinions on it, which is that I visually think the new sign is much cleaner with way less letters, which I'm more drawn to. I find the other one really busy. I also don't particularly find the way the ice cream cone was sort of protruding outward, to be particularly attractive. So I think, I'd be curious to know what that depth is above it that the lights are taking up. How much is that? Because that's a good question. But the sign itself, I find a big improvement while still embracing the original logo.
I agree. It's simpler, it's cleaner, it's a little more contemporary, and I am not bothered by the downlights extending that far up in order for the lights to focus down on the sign. I think it's a much better solution.
I agree that it's much cleaner looking. The only question I would have is, I hope they don't plan on putting the makeshift notes that they have on the current sign with the no milk, and they don't plan on using the stanchions there to post other messages, are they?
Yeah.
I think I may be able to respond to that a little bit. That was during the height of the pandemic when people were able to and just drive through and pick up milk. I think that was very temporary. And while we don't necessarily encourage that kind of signage, I think it was necessary during the time period. And
Understood.
I don't expect that they would continue that. I mean, I do know that they had a lot of, they were being very generous and being overrun, and that was the only way to cope with it immediately. So I think it's understood that that is not a permanent fixture to the sign.
Okay.
Pretty sure the application stated that that was not going to be there after they redid the sign.
I believe legally it can't be there. It would be more signage than they're permitted to have out there. So I don't believe the signage can be there, that
Right.
additional signage by code.
No, not legally, right?
Well, I'm getting an opinion here, consensus of opinion before before FrontierNet drops me again, that the consensus is that as a whole, the planning board feels that this sign is an improvement over the existing one and would recommend that the sign be, that the variances be granted by the ZBA.
Like-
Edna, perhaps you,
I have a question. Is there any, I mean, I can't remember now. Is there any landscaping in that sort of corridor right now, or are they proposing any?
I think he's had some planters
Yeah.
or something in there,
I think so.
something
too.
along
And I
those
mean,
lines.
I'm trying to remember because it does look pretty stark, and certainly some landscaping would ground it a little bit, so to speak.
There is. I think there's like small little bushels that are pretty low
Yeah.
though, if I remember correctly, with some flower beds that line the street.
Yeah, I think it's already been softened by landscaping. So right now it looks pretty stark. But that has nothing to do with my opinion of the sign.
Okay,
So
well, we have a draft here, resolution. Why don't I go through that and see how we wish to respond to the three questions here. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, upon referral by the zoning administrator, of an application by Dell's Roadside for a sign permit. One, we find the sign design approvable. Okay. Are we comfortable with the sign design?
I am.
Anyone not comfortable with it? So we'd say we find the sign design approvable or appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually find it to be an improvement.
Okay. Regarding the noted variances in the zoning administrator's determination letter, do we see there being any planning issues with that? Any reason for the ZBA not to grant those?
I don't.
I don't.
No.
No.
Okay. So we see no planning issues. Okay. Recommends that the zoning administrator blank and contact New York State DOT Region 8 to ensure they do not have any concerns related to the sign in the right of way or a roadside structure in proximity to Route 9. We want to say recommends the zoning administrator approve the sign design and contact New York State DOT.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael, that was just my addition in there because, you know, the DOT, I think, has a pretty wide right of way. Just want to make sure they don't have any issues. I don't think they will, but just want to clear that.
Okay. So we're going to recommend that the zoning administrator approve the sign design
Yes.
and contact.
Actually, in that, does she need to contact DOT before she approves? I'm just looking at the.
I don't know that she needs to do it before. I mean, she can approve the sign design. But
Okay,
DOT
all right,
can always object if they feel they don't
Okay.
want it there.
all right. I'm fine with that.
I can figure out how to word that a little bit, Melody.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the sequence.
Yeah, I don't know if Michelle would directly do that or recommend that they have to do that. Maybe the ZBA does as part of their referrals, but I want to put that out there. We should at least, someone should be contacting DOT.
Yeah, I agree. But you're going to wordsmith that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll put something together
Okay.
to that effect.
Well, we have the resolution that we find the design approvable and we don't find any planning issues with it. And we believe the zoning administrator can approve the sign and also contact New York State DOT is the gist of what we have here. Does anyone wish to add anything? Okay, could I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved, Melody.
All in favor? I mean, wait a minute, a second, sorry.
Second, Kathy.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I'm gonna say
Any nays?
nay, Edna.
Okay, very- Okay, nay from Edna. So it's 6-1. 6 yay, 1 nay. We will pass that along to Michelle. All right, I believe we're now prepared to deal with our public hearings. I'll go down these first three, and we have continuation dates, which Gretchen has supplied us with, and we'll have resolutions to continue. The first one is for Jennifer Parsons at 6:35 p.m. She has requested that we continue her public hearing to March 15th at 6:35 p.m. Could I hear a motion to so approve the resolution to continue her public hearing to March 15th?
So moved, Edna.
Second,
please.
Kathy.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. The second is for Kathy Marriott on Bolin Becker Road. We would continue her public hearing to March 15th at 6:40 p.m. Could I hear a motion to approve the continuation, please?
So moved, Melody.
Second,
Se-
please.
Second, Kathy.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Very good. And the third is Hannah Barrett at 317 Mill Road. We will be continuing her public hearing to March 15th at 6:45 p.m. Could I hear a motion to continue the public hearing to 6:45 p.m. on March 15th for Hannah Barrett, please?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you. Second,
Second,
Melody.
Sean.
Sean, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Our next public hearing is at 7:50, so we have a few minutes before that. Jim, do you want to just start a discussion on the planning board report that you put together for us to share with the town board on what we did in 2020?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think it should go 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then we can we'll get to that public hearing if that works. So, so what I've done is put together essentially a planning board highlights presentation from last year, just kind of highlighting and showing what it was. Can everyone see it? Make sure that before I go further.
Yes.
Okay. Highlighting and showing what it is that the planning board did and accomplished last year, with the intention of not only presenting it tonight to you and those on the call and on the Zoom call, but also presenting this to the town board. And so at the end of this, I'd just like to, I guess, get general approval from the planning board that you're okay with that, with me carrying this forward for a town board, hopefully a presentation in the near future. So with that, we'll get right into it. So we start out by summarizing what the board makeup was in 2020. We did start out with a full board at the beginning of the year, and then Woody resigned in the spring, putting us down one person. Our last pre-COVID in-person meeting, as you can kind of see in the blurry picture here, was held in March. Haven't had an in-person meeting since March 2nd, 2020. And then we actually went on hiatus with meetings entirely until the June 1st meeting, which is when we began the Zoom meetings. At that point in June, we had 6 board members for the remainder of the year, and all of the meetings were run by Zoom, as everyone here knows. So just summarizing the amount of work that was done last year, we'll start off with the pre-conference meetings. As you can see here, the first quarter of 2020, we had 16 applicants come in for a pre-conference meeting. In the second quarter, there were 7, and that's to be that's understandable given that we were running into COVID and things were kind of on pause. And then when we started things back up again, late summer into the fall, we got right back to where we were with 17 applicants for the pre-conference meetings in both the third and fourth quarters. All pre-conference meetings have been initiated by the zoning administrator. They were scheduled by Gretchen, the planning board secretary, attended by Michael, Melody, and myself, and then obviously the applicants. And as you can see in the listing below, a lot of what we saw were, several additions, lots of applications for additions. We had some commercial operations. We did have some subdivision type proposals come in, fence installations, a number of pools or pool houses, again, other different renovations, window installation, and a couple of commercial operations came in as well. So in terms of the planning board, first quarter, we held all 4 meetings as they were scheduled. Second quarter, again, due to COVID, we only held 2 of our 3 scheduled meetings. But then in the third quarter, we did make up for that. We held all the meetings that we had scheduled at the beginning of the year, and then also held 2 additional meetings to try and catch up a bit from those months that we had fallen behind because all meetings were canceled or put on pause. And then in the fourth quarter, we held all 5 meetings as they were proposed. So, we really, even though we did have a slowdown during COVID, really did kind of catch up a bit, I think, in the third quarter and start kind of getting back on track. And then this is where we start getting into, showing really the amount of work that the planning board does. In the first quarter, and this is not necessarily, these are all presentations. So we make, obviously, applicants come in for an initial presentation and then a follow-up public hearing, if not more than one. But effectively, the first quarter, we had 34 project presentations and 4 referrals that the planning board worked on. Second quarter obviously went down to 12, and that was actually only in the month of June. And then in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, we picked right back up again, 36 and 32 presentations each, a number of referrals coming the planning board's way. And then in the end of the fourth quarter, we actually started seeing some timeline extension requests come in, which has actually continued here into the first quarter of 2021 as well, with a number of projects asking us for timeline extensions on their work to get building permits or other approvals. And it's important to note, and I think, as part of this slide, that all of these projects, and again, there may be more than one meeting in here, but every single project included a field visit conducted by planning board members. And there's a lot of volunteer time that goes into not only reviewing these, projects, participating in the Zoom meetings or the in-person meetings as we had them, but also a lot of time conducted in field work, which proves to be invaluable as we go through these projects. So one of the things I did want to summarize for you and the town board is kind of the large projects that we are reviewing and kind of have been reviewing. And I think everyone here, pretty much knows where we stand on these. We've had Rockledge, which is 36 units on 135 acres in the RC5 and up in the hills in the eastern part of town. The Grassmere proposal with proposed changes to the Country 2 Inn on their 250 acre site. Rugi's Automotive is coming in with a proposal to relocate all of their automobile services to the ORP, which is located on Route 9G. It's a zoning district on Route 9G. And then just to the north and west, I guess, from Rugi's Automotive is a proposal for Rhinebeck Villas, which is a hotel also located along Route 9G. And then the other large ongoing project right now is the KPH2 Astor Courts proposal and the master plan for the 4 properties, which we're actually going to hear about later today. The other large project that we looked at in 2020 was a solar project for Michael DeCola, which was the largest on-site solar project we reviewed in 2020. And the planning board spent quite a bit of time working on that application as it came through. So I thought it'd be good and important to just quickly kind of highlight some of the common themes that, I think I saw in 2020 with what was going on. We had a significant number of residential additions and renovation projects, some of which were pretty significant. We're talking on some of these properties about major changes and significant money being invested into these single family residential properties. That includes Mattal, which everyone here I think has been involved in, Smith Tannery Place, and then again, the DeCola property where there was a proposal to reuse an existing structure and create a home there. We had many ground mounted solar projects. All of them were for on-site usage. But even with that, some of the arrays have been pretty large. We had one proposal with a solar array that was 77 feet long and 17 feet wide. We had another one that had 2 39 by 11 foot units. So these solar installations that are going in, some of them have a pretty good size to them on these individual lots, but again, all used for on-site usage. We saw several commercial projects currently on undeveloped land that came before us, maybe not necessarily before the planning board, but as a pre-app, and several of those are coming now before us here in 2021. Many of the projects that we've seen have needed variances to accomplish the proposed work, and just wanted to kind of call that out, showing that we are dealing with projects on somewhat constrained sites as we move through them. The large projects that I summarized on the previous slide, have taken, some of them taken a while to get through, a year or two to complete, and will take, a couple of years most likely for all of these projects to, finally come to completion when they're finally developed and built out. And again, I just wanted to, reiterate on a common theme that the planning board members, in 2020 committed a significant amount of volunteer time. Again, not only in the meetings, but through reviewing the plans and attending all the site visits. So as we look ahead to this year and what we're looking forward to in 2021, I'm anticipating that most, if not all of our meetings are going to be virtual for this year. I don't see that changing. We are seeing a lot more, and part of this is because the HAPAC is now in effect, but a lot more HAPAC referrals. Some of these referrals are for very historic properties in town. So they're very significant projects that are coming forward. I think we're likely to see, and we know that we're likely to see more addition and renovation projects on residential properties as a number of people move into town looking to buy property that's here and improve it or change it to what they would like to see. And based on a very quick review that I did of application contact information, it does appear that there is at least a notable number of people coming from the New York City metro area purchasing property in the town of Rhinebeck. We anticipate more on-site ground-mounted solar projects. A few of those have come through as pre-apps already. We've also had, I believe, 2 pre-apps come through where we may see a conservation subdivision, and that's something new that we haven't really dealt with before. So that'll be a new project and a new path we'll go down together and get those accomplished, see where they go. Again, projects seem to be on increasingly constrained lots of variances, wetland issues, and other natural features constraints. I do believe that our large projects that I had on the previous slide are all going to seek approval in 2021. So I think we'll have a pretty full plate this year with those alone, in addition to the other projects that will come before you. And we're once again very happy to have a full planning board roster to help go through all of this and make sure we can get the workload accomplished. So again, looking ahead to 2021, I just took a quick screenshot of a tracking sheet that I do. there is a significant potential backlog of projects that could be coming to the town of Rhinebeck. We typically see 6 to 8 new applications per month come through the pre-app meetings. And this list is a list of either projects that are in front of us or projects that have come in for pre-app that have not come forward yet. Now, not all of these may come forward. Some might, some may not. And again, some of them are before us right now. But generally, this is the list of projects that are either ongoing or could potentially come forward based on the reviews that we've had through pre-apps or in front of you already. So there's already a lot potentially in the queue. And again, we get 6 to 8 new applications a month. So there's more on in the way. And finally, we just wanted to quickly kind of go through the submission process flowchart for how projects get to the planning board. So, you know, all applications come in other than a subdivision and go to the building department for building permit. That's reviewed by Michelle Turk, the ZEO and ZA, to determine if an action is needed by the planning board or if the ZBA will be required for the building permit to be issued. Subdivision applications that come in go straight to Gretchen as the planning board clerk, and she schedules pre-app meetings to assist the applicant in preparing their presentation for the planning board. So as you can see in the flow chart, you know, we'll start with site plan because there isn't an initial step for subdivision. When site plan comes in and approval is required, an application is submitted, it goes to Michelle. If it's agricultural, forestry, or conservation use that's permitted by right, it does not require site plan review. If it's a special ag site plan review, there are expedited processes for farm buildings and structures with footprints over 15,000 square feet. But assuming it's not one of those, the application comes in, goes to Michelle. Then if it meets the requirements, it's submitted for a pre-application conference review with Michael, Melody, and myself. And that's where we get into a review for subdivision as well. The subdivision would come in for a pre-application conference. After it gets through that conference, if everything looks good for the pre-application conference and the review by Michelle, it is then submitted officially for review by the planning board for your review, a site visit, and any public hearings and actions. During that time, you know, if any review finds an inconsistency with the code, a referral to the zoning administrator or zoning board of appeals is made. So, you know, in a nutshell, it's just kind of quickly showing you how the projects come in and the process that they take to get, you know, on the agenda here in front of the planning board. And that's it. A really quick kind of run through of what we've done, what you've done, where you stood in 2020 and where we think we're going to go. Are there any questions?
Really well done, Jim. I think it's really important for people to see how much work this planning board does. And this is a great summary. Plus, it's pretty. Look at all that work you put into it. It's nice.
That is a Rhinebeck photo. I would never use
Yeah,
any.
that's nice.
5 stars.
Did the
for
2
pretty.
new guys run screaming from the room? No, not yet. Okay. Anyway, it's great work.
So
Can
Well,
I
thank you.
just say that we have never done this before? And Michael and I requested this of Jim, and I think it's really important going forward that we do this annually to show the work that goes on at the planning board level, not only for the town board and for ourselves, but I think this would be something great to be posted on the town website so that more and more people can understand the process and the amount of volunteer time and behind the scenes time that goes into making the planning process work.
and there is a lot, you know, that I think the slides really show, you know, the amount of work that does go into this. It's a lot of volunteers.
And I will say that additionally, this is the work that went on in a year where the entire country was shut down due to COVID. So can you imagine what would be going on otherwise? You know, everything slowed down, as you pointed out, Jim, in that second quarter, but everything has bounced back. And I think we all see the challenges that are ahead of Rhinebeck in terms of recovery, because in my opinion, this is a period of time when the face of the town could change dramatically. Demographics are changing, needs are changing, the pressure on the town is changing. So I think it's very timely to bring this to the attention of anybody who's involved in or caring about the future of Rhinebeck.
Yes, so I guess with that, I'd just like to find out if the planning board is okay with me bringing this forward to the town board and making a presentation to them, essentially what I made to you, maybe a little slower. I'm trying to get through it quickly tonight. But let them know, what you guys did last year, what was done in 2020.
Jim, do you expect to do this at a town board meeting, a public meeting?
Yes, that would be my intent. That's gonna be my request and my ask. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it's
Yeah,
a
Jim,
great
I
idea,
specifically,
Jim.
sorry, Jim, I
No,
specifically
no.
like the trends. I think it'll be interesting to look at that year over year, particularly.
Absolutely. See if I'm right.
I
Anybody
think,
else?
Jim, the consensus of opinion is to go ahead and absolutely arrange a time where you can present to the town board. I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity for them to really understand, what the planning board does and how much, we really do have to deal with. And I think and for any number of reasons, it'll be very helpful. So thank you very much for putting this together. It's
Bravo.
kind of a scary
Bravo.
document now that I'm looking at it.
Yes, no, you're all still on for this year, so don't run away now. So I will I'll contact Josh Pulver as the what is he?
Liaison.
Liaison. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. The liaison of the planning board, and work with him on trying to get this on a town board meeting, and I'll let everyone know when that happens. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
Michael,
Thank
if there are any
you.
other
Thank you.
questions-
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I'm
Yeah.
here for. Michael, if there are any other questions, I'll turn it back over to you to get back to the regular agenda.
Yeah. But now Michael is holding things up.
Jim, did he get dropped?
I think we just
Yep.
lost Michael. Oh,
All right, I'll,
are you there, Michael?
He's back.
yep,
Yeah,
he's
I'm here.
back.
Okay. Thank you, Melody.
I was gonna
Thank
jump.
you, Frontier. Okay, we can go to our next public hearing, which we actually have ready to go tonight. It's Dave's Tree Service, Route 9G Site Plan Review. The applicant representative here for this.
Just start video. We're here just starting the video, sorry. Sets
Okey-doke. Mark, if you'd like to take us through what's being proposed?
Sure, Michael. I'm gonna actually have Seth do it. Seth's spent a lot of time on the project. I think he'll do a great job explaining it.
Okay. Seth?
Jim, just a quick
Take it
note
away.
is, have you let Dave Hughes in? It's the
I'm
client.
sorry?
Has Dave been allowed into the meeting?
Yes, everybody is in.
Okay.
Up here, it says Ella. That's my daughter's name, but she.
Okay.
Sorry,
I was looking,
for some
I
reason
couldn't
the
find it.
camera's not working, but I'm here.
Everyone's working under an alias tonight.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
Good
take
evening.
it away.
There I am.
So as Michael had mentioned, this is the proposal for Dave's Tree Service. What we're looking at now is the existing conditions plan. The lot is a 11.57 acre parcel located in the Gateway North District along the southwest side of Route 9G. Dave is at this site because it's a good place for a forestry business with an office. Forestry is a permitted use in this zone, and the office space is what brings us before you as a site plan. One thing I just wanted to note on the existing conditions is that there's a majority of a central part of the site, as well as an existing roadway that enters off of 9G. That's in the south, east corner of the property. And that existing path takes us back into the middle of the property where a significant portion of the area is existing open space. So the planned development for this project is to utilize both that existing access way and portions of it with improved entrance, as well as utilize the existing open space in the central part of the site. If we could go to the second sheet, that would be great. This is a more detailed area of our development. So the majority of this will take place, as I said, along the central and southeast portions of the property. We will be improving an entrance that is a minor commercial entrance with New York State DOT. That will be just to the right of the picture you can see here. That is in a location where there's an existing access, and we are looking to widen it just a little bit to accommodate the vehicles that will be used here. As we travel into the site, we're proposing a 20-foot drive aisle so that we could allow two-way traffic as needed. We moved through the site with some small improvements to the existing road that's there, mostly just surface grading. However, not too much. It's really keeping in with what the existing roadway layout is there. That travels into that open central portion of the site where Dave is proposing a 100 by 60-foot building for use for his business. There's a maximum of 10 employees that could utilize the site. We've provided parking for the employees as well as some vehicle parking externally. The site will be supplied with water supply and wastewater disposal as approved by Dutchess County Department of Health. The facility for sanitary disposal is located just to the south of the building. And the well is actually located just towards the northwest corner of the building. We've worked on the site to grade and utilize existing low points and existing features to slightly improve them. So all of the site flow is actually, in this area, is actually surface flow that then is controlled and directed towards some management areas. The yard that is proposed here is for essentially forestry operations and parking. These are larger equipments, trailers and things, so there's some space that's necessary to make the turning movements as well as larger spaces that are needed to park the vehicles. The total disturbance of, like I said, this is an 11.57 acre parcel. Our total proposed disturbance area is 1.95 acres, and the impervious is just over 1 acre of impervious area. So it's a fairly limited site development in that respect, as we're trying to keep with most of what's existing. The property is screened substantially by existing forest and trees. We are making some we have made some adjustments to the site plan in order to maintain a few specimen trees, which we've noted out there. Just some beautiful trees that we'd like to keep. And the idea for landscaping, we do have a little bit of landscaping shown on this, is mostly to enhance and utilize the existing landscaping. For as far as signage goes, Dave is proposing a small sign to be located just to the north of the entrance. But we do have a little bit of infrastructure, some catch basins and drainage piping to accommodate surface flow and discharge in existing locations. And then we are proposing just a little bit of plantings along the south side of the site in an area where there isn't existing
No, it's his employee.
in that location. The majority of lighting on the site, mostly the facility will be used by the employees. They will come in the morning, between the hours of like 6 and 8, and they come in, they'll be directed towards job sites that are off-site. They will take the equipment from this location off-site for the day, and then they will come back in the evening. But they're usually between 4 and 6. Lighting on this site is minimal. We've looked to put on some screened fixtures that are wall mounted to the actual building over the garage doorways, and that is all as far as exterior lighting goes. For the most part, that's a summary of the site development. I don't know if anyone has specific questions or any other details they'd like to discuss.
Well, I guess at this point, I'll ask the two planning board members who did the site visit if they could give a report on that site visit. I think it was Edna and
Sean.
Sean. Yes, if you two could tell us what you saw and give us any guidance in terms of what this project
It
is
was
going to
early.
entail.
I'll start, and Sean, why don't you add whatever thoughts you might have? Is that okay?
Sounds great, Edna. Thank you.
Okay. The property is on the west side of 9G as you get close to the bridge approach. From the road, what you see is a small field surrounded by trees. The driveway already exists, will be improved. But as you walk up the driveway, when you're about halfway there, the driveway on either side is surrounded by trees. So to a large extent, the building will not be seen from the road. There will be some trees taken out, as I understand, to build the building. The placement of it was selected to try to keep a couple of specimen trees there, as was discussed. The rest of the trees that would be taken out were not particularly large or were not specimen trees. Sean, what can you add?
You're a tough act to follow, Edna. I'd say one of the big things is that I really enjoyed was the space of where they chose to interrupt, if we want to use that word, is quite wide open. So there is limited clearing that needs to be done. There's a little bit of clearing that needs to be done south of the building for the septic that was discussed, but it's all, again, very limited. You cannot see from on top of the property. You cannot see the road. You cannot see any other structure as a whole from when we were up there in the middle of the winter, which I think is important because in the summer is even going to be more excluded from visual sight. So
Very good.
We asked if any landscaping is proposed, particularly along the road. The answer was no. I'm assuming that the field will be mowed. Is that correct?
That is correct, as I understand.
Dave, you can speak to that.
Yeah, that'll definitely be mowed and maintained.
Are there questions from other members of the planning board?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, and that was that I was actually able to go up there earlier. And the introduction of a commercial property in Rhinebeck always raises red flags for people. This is what I think one of the most perfect applications. It's not going to be visible. It allows Dave's Tree Service to do what they need to do. It's not visible from the road. I think this is really a very fine site plan application that protects Rhinebeck and allows Dave's Tree Service to do what they need to do.
Anyone else have a question?
I have just two questions, although it sounds like a lot of questions have already been answered through everyone's great work and the good application. How many vehicles live here? And is there any places where the vehicles could be, that it also just couldn't be seen? Like it would be screened everywhere the vehicles would live to, not just the structure?
That's correct.
And then My only other question, just because I couldn't quite tell from the aerial view, farther out with other property lines around it, can you see any houses from that positioning through the woods?
No,
We made note of that when the planning board members came out for the site visit. We took a look around in all directions and did point out the locations. And this, in this instance, it's to the west is where there's some northwest, some residential development. And we were unable to see any of that development from the location, standing right in the central portion of the development.
I think Edna and others who made the site visit might conclude, as I did, that when you walk up the driveway and you get to this sort of plateau, you really feel quite secluded from everything around you. Am I imagining that, or is that how you felt when you got there?
That's exactly how I felt. It's
Yes.
and it's very clear. It's kind of, yes, it's a perfect spot.
I agree, Melody. When we went there, that's exactly the impression I had. Once you get over that plateau, it's almost like you're in a different area.
Yeah.
You're taken away, from what's going on outside. It's a lovely spot, and I'm delighted because there are some magnificent oaks that they're going to be saving, which I think add a great deal of character to the property and look awfully nice.
I mean, if you had a spot to drop this in, I don't think that you could have found a better spot. It just sort of lands there, and there's a great level of topographical protection around it that lends to this actual application.
This is Jim. I have one question, probably for Seth. I didn't catch this earlier. The sign that you're proposing looks like it has 12 square feet. It's 3x4 on each side. And in this district, you can only have 12 square feet total for both sides. So one thing I'm thinking is, right now it looks like the sign is proposed to be perpendicular to the road. If it were turned to be parallel and just facing out toward the road, then that would give you the one face with the 12 square feet. Otherwise, I think the sign's gonna have to be shrunk to be 12 square feet total. So it'd be 6 on either side.
I'd like to discuss that with Dave and see how he might like to, whether he'd like to rotate the sign or whether he might like to reduce the size.
Yeah. I didn't.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just gonna say the other possibility is, get a variance from the ZBA for a greater sign area if you chose to do that.
Or decide and get an approval.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Dave, do you have any comments on that right now at the moment?
I mean, that took me away a little bit, so I just gotta, do I have to decide that now, or is that something we can decide as it gets closer?
Can Michael, can he decide to bring the sign into conformance in order to get an approval tonight?
Make it a condition.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. And if you choose to change it, you could go to the ZBA first, apply for a variance. If you got the variance, then you just come back to amend the site plan
Okay.
and put in the sign you originally wanted to put in.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up our approval over a sign issue.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wish I'd caught it earlier. I didn't look at the angle of the sign, but yeah, it's a double-sided one, and the way it is it's not going to be consistent. That's something we've been dealing with several of these commercial properties that came in. So yeah, if the planning board's willing to make it a condition of approval, I think the sign is fine as proposed. It's just the size that's an issue.
I would be happy to make that a condition of approval.
Just, it seems to be going along fairly quickly. I just wanted to make sure you were going to have time for some public questions and comments.
We will, yes, in just a moment. Anything else from the planning board? I know we got a written report from the CAB. I don't know if they've someone here tonight who wished to make any public comment. Okay. Members of the public who would care to speak, comment, or questions, please feel free to do so now.
Thank you.
Catherine?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I guess I'm primarily concerned with what all falls under forest operations. and whether this is just primarily or only the vehicles coming in and out and parking and things like that, or whether there's going to be, I'm primarily concerned about noise. We live just to the west of this installation. And so is there going to be chipping all the time, chainsaws all the time, or is all of that going to be done off-site and this is really your operational hub?
Yeah, it's an operational hub. There's not going to be any chipping or anything done there. No.
And no, like, you know, taking from big logs to small logs or things?
No chainsaws running, no cutting firewood there, no chipping.
Okay.
No, nothing that would make noise. Yep.
That sounds lovely. Thank you.
If by any means, if I'm noisy, you call me. I'll straighten it out. No worries.
Thank you. Great relief.
Other questions or comments from members of the public?
Michael, it's Christopher Capo. Can you hear me?
Yes, it can.
Hi, I also live near the project, and I appreciate Catherine's question. I had a similar question. And I do appreciate, I don't know Dave, but I think he's the guy that puts the nice lights up in the village.
Yes.
So look, you know, any business owner that actually gives back to the village and the town, I do appreciate. So I appreciate the thought that went into the plan and you know, the way you guys laid it out. The only comment that I would make here, and I know, you know, you've got it situated on the site exactly where you want it, but just in general, what I've been seeing in some of these bigger projects is they seem to end up being a lot closer to residential that backs up to it than they do to 9G. And I know there's a minimum setback requirement in that area, but you know, like when I look at the building here, and you're going to tell me you can't do it probably, but if the whole thing were rotated 180 degrees, so the building was more north, and then the road area was to the south, it would get it away from residential a little bit better. And also, if the entire thing were moved a little closer to 9G, you know, it would do that as well. And look, I'm pointing that out. I'm not saying, you know, it's a big issue for me because, you know, I think there's enough distance, but just in general, it seems like these projects tend to kind of sit near the residential side of things.
Dave, Mark, you want to comment?
Sure. So I just actually pulled up parcel access, and so your house is actually 900 feet away from our, approximately 900 feet away from the proposed development area. And once again, it was the, I mean, as Melody mentioned, what we did before we even made application, I had requested a, you know, for a pre-application, a site meeting for this particular project, just because I, you know, wanted to address the sensitivity to the residential properties that are to the south and west of it, of this particular parcel. And the idea of, you know, maintaining that separation to the residential properties, you know, specifying the use of this particular business, that it's, and Dave reiterated that it's, you know, mainly it's just a hub to you know, launch vehicles in the morning, bring them back, and just have storage for them. I will also note that there's no maintenance of the vehicles that's also going to take place on the property. And then finally, some of the would also, you know, the area was cleared. It has already been cleared. We're proposing, where Dave's proposing to develop, but also, you know, topographically, it lends itself to this type of development. And as you move, if you were to move further, I guess, to the northeast, you know, closer to Route 9, you know, topography, you know, the topography is not as favorable, and also you certainly risk, you know, some more tree clearing, and then exposure of the building. So, certainly respectful of your, your comments, and being considerate of the residential properties. We started that right from the beginning, right from the pre-application application, for this project, and at the same time, having an open discussion with those board members and the planner about what the specific, use and the details of the use for this property are, and that in turn is also respectful of the residential properties adjoining this piece. So, that was certainly in the forefront of the design process and working with the planning board, to proceed with the project. So, I note the comment, but we certainly, it's always been a consideration, and we think I think we've adequately addressed it.
So, Mr. Graminsky, I guess if you go back to that last view that you were on, yeah. So I guess my simple question would have been the outline that you show here, where the road comes in. Could you just kind of hover your mouse over where the building is approximately on this? It's down there, right? So I guess the only point I would make is there was no way to move the building to the north part of that outline, right?
No, not into. To also, you need to actually, if you go to sheet 2, when you look at the entire, development of the entire site, and also, so there are two things, it's just maneuvering the vehicles and storage of the vehicles. And also we did extensive testing for wastewater disposal on the site. And as you go to the north, right, and when you look at to the northeast of that section that's up there now, you see a hill. There's a hill there. That's all rock. And so as we, we did some test holes through that area, and it's a shallow depth to bedrock. And so the choice for the wastewater disposal was, closer to the residential properties. And that was also a consideration of siting of the building, just to limit the amount of site disturbance and to have the building closer to a suitable location for wastewater disposal.
Oh, okay, thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your comments. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share with us tonight? Anyone from the planning board have any additional questions or comments?
No,
Okay, could I hear a motion? I'm sorry?
I said no.
Could I hear a motion? Oh, thank you. Could I hear a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved, Melody.
Second, Edna.
Second? Thank you, Edna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. With any luck at all, I'll get through this resolution before I get dropped again. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Dave's Tree Service for a site plan approval under Town Code Chapter 125 for property along Route 9G in the Gateway North zoning district. We reaffirm the proposed action as type 2 under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon review of submitted information, including portion planning board members and CAB members on their site visit to the project property, we find that the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for site plan approval, we find the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-75. We approve the application inclusive of the application materials and plans by Mark R. Graminsky, PELS, PC, dated December 28, 2020. We authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified within Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125.78B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements. Payment of all outstanding fees and or reimbursable amounts due the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of applications subject to this resolution, and receipt of all approvals, authorizations, or
Oh dear.
We lost him.
I think we lost Michael, so I can finish it. Certifications required herein or from any other town, county, state, or other agency as required to undertake the proposed actions. I think we are also going to add a condition that the sign would be redesigned to be consistent with the zoning code.
Can
Exactly.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you
perfect.
very much, Jim. All right. Could I hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Melody.
Second, Edna.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will poll the board. Sean,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Edna,
Aye.
Melody,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Elise. Elise?
Oh, I said aye. I'm sorry. My service
Oh,
isn't great.
okay, that's okay. And I also vote aye. Okay, Mark, Dave, you're all set. Once you
Great.
get the site plan to me for stamping and signature, you'll be in a position to get the building permit and get going with it.
Great. Thank you very much. I
Good
appreciate
luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay, we have one more public hearing, and that is KPH2 Management, T Court, and Brindle Valley master plan application.
Hey, Jim, is Howard on?
Yes. Yes, Mark, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark is handing this over to me, I think, entirely tonight. Jim, is this the PowerPoint presentation that we submitted?
Yeah, this should be the file that I got
Yeah.
from you before with the slides.
Okay, all right. We'll go.
So
page by page.
we're all good on the schedule for tonight?
We're
Yes.
hoping for a 20-minute presentation, and then there are going to be questions and answers after the
Yes.
presentation, so the presentation is not interrupted.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, we're good?
Okay.
Just say yes, Howard, just say yes.
Yes, we're good. We're good. I think 20 minutes. I'll try. I may take 22.
No, 20. I was angling for 15. I gave you 20, so let's go.
Okay. All right. I think at this point, everyone on the board is well aware that we've made several applications for this client. We've had to restart that process at least twice because of purchasing new property. And this is such another case where we've purchased an additional 11 acres from our northern neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's caused us to rethink a little bit of how we arrange some of the things that we have proposed. But also, I'd like to note that this is the first application that follows our submission of the cultural landscape report. And there was much that, that we discovered through that report that changed our thinking for how we want to, or let's say the degree of restoration we want to do of the property versus the amount of new work. So what you're going to see tonight is a rebalancing of that effort at restoration and new work. What we have here are three properties. Originally, we only owned Astor Courts, which was the casino, the historic men's club of the original Ferncliff estate. Subsequently purchased Tea House, which was the site of the original Ferncliff mansion, followed by the purchase of Brindlebrook to the closer to River Road. That was former tenants' houses and shops that were serving the estate. The 11 acres we just purchased are on the right side of this image against our northern neighbor, north being to the right of this image. So now we have a significant property that acts as almost like a horseshoe wrapping the Ferncliff nursing home. I'd like to, if you move to the next, Jim.
Can we enlarge this at all?
Yep, I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
Just the transition may be a little slower, but I can.
Okay, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the what we're calling the historic core of the property. This was the the sort of center area of the Astor Courts and Tea House properties. That is mostly a large open rolling lawn area. The original mansion house was to the sort of left, or excuse me, to the right center of this image, where you see this a circular element with an L in it. It's about that area was the original mansion house. This center area it's really the residential core of the original estate. And our effort here is primarily to bring back circulation and visual access, visual just views across this what we're calling here the East Valley. So in this area, the primary changes are to remove through the center of that East Valley, there is currently a driveway that's part of the subdivision, remove that, and then restore the original driveway that linked the Tea House, was subdivided as Tea House properties and Astor Courts. You can go to the next slide. Jim, if we can go to the next one. Yeah, so this is the view from Astor Courts looking across that open area. We're calling the Central Park. This is looking north, and you can see that driveway that we're going to remove running across the center of that image. Go to the next slide. Okay, this is the opposite direction, looking south. You can see that driveway there, looking up towards Astor Courts. So this was the big American iteration of the English Deer Park, a large rolling green lawn surrounded by trees, many shade trees dotting along its edges. We can go to the next slide. Now, yeah, in the course of the process of this application, we did have the incident where a number of large locust trees were cut down on the property, and to answer to that incident, we proposed planting 25 new large mature shade trees. This is that area, and you can see that these are significant trees. Our client was very, very impressed by this effort and wanted to see more of this done in other areas of the property. So in learning, in looking through the cultural landscape report, found a number of maps showing where shade trees were in the original estate. And if we can go to the next slide. This is that same area after the lawn had come in. You can see the restoration trees on the left side. And the driveway you see in there, that is the original driveway. We just, for planting the trees, we scraped off the topsoil and sod that was on that to use its base as the construction road. We'd like to, in this application, to ask to finish restoring that driveway with finished materials. You can go to the next slide. Now, this is a 1906 map from the Cultural Landscape Report that is very valuable for us. It actually shows all of the trees around that core of the property and identifies them with size and species. This is very useful for us. You can see the tree remediation area that used to be the locust grove, the driveway section that we're trying to restore, and most importantly, for this particular slide, just above the restored driveway, you can see that there were no trees in 1906 in that particular valley. So that was actually a view corridor from the original mansion that was off to the right of this slide, looking south towards the river and the mountains beyond. You can go to the next slide. So this is a 1940s aerial photograph. You can see inside the green circle, that same area with the driveway in the lower portion of the circle, and then in the center area, that open lawn area. If I can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a 1912 colored photograph looking south from the original mansion area. And you can see the driveway in front of you, and to the right of that open area. To the left, that original locust grove where we've done the tree remediation. You can go to the next slide. On the left photo, a 1953 shot showing that same area with the open view through that particular spot. And on the right, the current condition where we've had about 50 or 60 years of overgrowth of trees come in. So we would like to propose that we remove those trees and open up that view as it was in 1906, up to, as we see here, at least to 1953. In this particular photograph on the left, you can see a few of the original trees of the property, the large trees, and below them are a tree remediation area. And then on the far right of the image, you can see some darker trees that are actually further down the hill that are quite large. That was the original edge of this open view corridor. So we'd like to remove the smaller trees that are between that and the larger shade trees on the left. Go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like in detail in the plan. We're calling this the West Valley and that narrow opening. You can go to the next slide. Okay, this is what the area looks like now, looking from the on the south side of it, looking north. Most of the trees in this image we'd like to remove, the smaller ones in the center area. There's a few on the right that are older, and we would keep those. We would once these trees are removed, we just reseed this area. And go to the next slide. Okay, another area where we'd like to do some restoration of trees is in this inside the red rectangle here. This is the area where the mansion house stood in the center of this rectangle along the driveway. The original house was surrounded by many trees. That was the driveway.
Is Howard breaking up for others, or is it just?
Yeah, he is. Howard, you're breaking.
Okay, do not know what that would be about. But can you go to the next slide?
It's just technology. We love it.
Okay, this is again the 1906 survey showing the mansion house and the and all of the trees. It's so hard to read the indications or identifications of each tree, but each of these IDs shows species and size. For this particular area, we'd like to put our new shade trees in nearly exactly the same locations as much as we can. We can't follow this. You can obtain some of the same species. Many of these trees were elm trees, not viable today, but we would use the same mix of trees that we used in the tree remediation effort. Go to the next slide. This is a circa 1900 view of that same area. You can see plenty of shade trees around the original mansion. Next slide. Okay, same view from a 1920 photograph. Next slide. Okay, this is a current aerial photograph of that area, the rectangle being approximate area of the mansion. Very few of those trees still exist. And you can see also the area where we have to, or are planning to restore the driveway connection towards Astor Courts. Next slide. Okay, this is the view of the location of the trees as we'd like to place them. Next slide. Okay, this is a view from the front porch of the original mansion in a 1900 etching showing some of those shade trees along the driveway, but it also shows a number of sculptures along that driveway. Our client is interested in bringing some art to Astor Courts. We've not worked out any details of what that might be yet, whether he'll be purchasing existing pieces or commissioning pieces, but we just wanted to bring that into the conversation that such things are of interest and would like to discuss with the board when we can what process you'd like to go through for reviewing that. Next slide. Okay, this is jumping back out of the main into the full site plan. I'd like to point out the dotted oval that's in the right center of the image. This is along the main driveway, that area. That the main gate of the original Astor Courts, or excuse me, the Ferncliff Estate was on River Road, just straight down from that area. So this is the primary approach to the estate. And it's an unusual landscape feature. Much of the driveways in this entire area or in the entire estate are curving and rolling around topography. This one section straightens out after it comes over a bridge into the core of the estate. If we can go to the next slide. This is another circa 1900 etching you can see on the left image there, that straight section of the driveway. This had a loose alley of trees, shade trees planted along it. The Cultural Landscape Report calls out a type of planting done originally on this estate based on the works of A.J. Downing, great American landscape gardener of the 1800s. It describes this kind of planting as a graceful style of not lining trees up, of just loosely scattering them with plenty of room around them. Not a natural form, but a park-like aesthetic. So we are going to use this type of imagery to place the new shade trees that we want to put in this area. Go to the next slide. Okay, this is the same area in the green circle in 1940s photograph, and you can see that cluster of trees along that area. Next slide. Okay, this is what it looks like currently. You can see a few of those original shade trees are still there, not in very good health, but we're doing what we can to keep them alive. This area also includes the unfortunate addition by a later owner of an earthen berm on the right side in that lower image, and planted with evergreen trees to screen the Ferncliff Nursing Home. We wish to remove all of that evergreen material, move it further back to the property line, remove the berm, and use this area to put more of those shade trees. Next slide. Okay, this is the blow up of the plan showing what that area would look like with the loose scattering of trees. Both of these two tree restoration areas that I'm talking about each take about 25 trees, which is most of the equivalent of what we put in the tree remediation area. And if any of the boards can come out, or board members can come out to see the site, we have to show you the type of planting that we're talking about with the tree remediation area. Next slide. Okay, getting into the detail of each of the three properties and what we want to change in them. This is the tea house area. As we said before, this is where the original mansion house was. Vincent Astor did build a small tea pavilion on this property, which is the small octagon in the center of the house shown here. Later owners expanded on this to significant efforts, and that included putting in the parking court, the driveway, and the swimming pool. What we're proposing to do is to remove one of those driveways that's labeled A in this plan, move the parking court away from the front of the house, shift it over towards the north. Currently, one has to walk through the parking court to get from the house to the pool area. We'd like to make that experience through a more formal garden. That's area D shown here. Small improvements throughout this, new paving around the swimming pool, adding a pergola, new pool fence that actually wraps around and includes the octagonal existing pavilion, expanding the terraces at the rear of the house. It's area G that includes a fire pit and an outdoor built-in spa. Some additional parking for staff, that's area J, and reworking the driveway, that's area B in here, for access to the new parking court. This also includes the lower right area, an existing cottage. We are losing, with moving the parking court, we're losing a basement garage under the current tea house. So this is adding a 3-bay garage to that cottage to make up for that loss. We're also, you can see that's the circular area there, L. That is a labyrinth. If you go to the next slide. This is a labyrinth I built, actually, designed and built about 10 years ago. This is, the labyrinths are used for meditation. They're very simple, not diagrams, paving on just at grade. You know, it's a single line that moves around in a knot, ultimately bringing the person traveling along to the center position. So this is all very low to the ground, and just a simple meditation area. Next slide. Okay, over at the Astor Courts property, most of what is shown here on this plan has already been permitted. That is the entry court and new parking area to the Astor Courts building, the play lawn behind the building, and the swimming pool. Each permitted in the previous application, as well as the service drive in another separate application. What's new in this plan is a little bit of work around the powerhouse, which is the top of the image. That's just reconfiguring some of the access there. It's currently, the entire building is surrounded with gravel. We're reducing that to limited parking areas and just planting most of the area in grass. Small terrace in the back of the house to be, or the back of the building to be added in. Significant thing in this plan are 2 hedge mazes. These are traditional English type of mazes that are 6-7 foot tall hedges, and just a folly for getting lost in. There'd be 2 of those. Both of these, by the way, are in previously disturbed areas. The square one at the bottom is in an area that's been used for quite some time as a staging area for the Astor Courts property. In service area, and then the other one, I believe, was Kathy's orchard was in that particular location. Next slide. Okay, this is a little bit north of that same area. You can see the, the large open lawn area of the East Valley. Just off of that, there's a small woodland garden area. There's some remnant stones from the Astor area, a small wooden bridge that's dilapidated. Just want to rebuild that as much as we can tell from the pieces that are left there. Also, there's a current, you can see in the existing aerial photograph at the bottom of the image, there's an existing service garage and service area. We wish to expand that for the larger properties with a 5-bay garage, a couple of some big landscape bins for landscape materials such as mulch and topsoil, that type of thing, and parking for maintenance staff. Next slide. And all of this area, by the way, will be fully screened on all 4 sides.
Are we close? Howard, are we close?
We're getting close. We have to jump into, we haven't gotten to the train yet. Okay, just Brindlebrook property.
All
With
right,
just all we're doing here is just we're adding a security gate to the existing driveway off of River Road, and beyond that, we want to change the driveways from having direct access to River Road to swinging across the property past the pond over to a secure point beyond the security gate. Also, the addition of a basketball half court behind one of the barns, well hidden from all view by plenty of existing trees. Next slide.
of course.
Okay, so for the train, Vincent Astor in the 1940s built a small miniature train. This is him on it. As you can tell, it's quite small. It's a 7.5-inch gauge track, and 7.5 inches between each track. Trains are just large enough for someone to ride on. Next slide. The yellow line is the line of Vincent's train. It began on the left side of this image over an existing tennis court with figure 8 that you see there, turned north and ran through the woods and along the open meadow area just south of the pond to loop around with a car barn and roundhouse in that location. Next slide. Okay, the 11 acres we purchased was from the driveway, that straight section you can see here, to the dashed line on the right. So we just incorporate just a small portion of Vincent's original train, but in the purchase of this 11 acres from SSS Farms LLC, they were kind enough to grant us through purchase an easement for the rest of the design of the train that we would wish to propose. Next slide. You can see that the shaded out area on the right-hand side of this image is where the easement is. This is all SSS Farms territory, and we go 2 loops of the train into that area. You can go to the next slide. Black and white is a little easier to see the lines of the train. It begins up at the tea house with a spur that runs diagonally across this page toward the center to a proposed car barn and roundhouse, and then 4 loops of the train, 3 in that sort of center right position, and then 1 that cuts down across to the former convent part of the property. Next slide. So this is what the contemporary trains look like. This is both an electric one and a steam one. I believe there was a question asked in the last presentation about how much noise these makes. I inquired. The electric ones make nearly no noise at all, just like an electric car would today. The steam one makes less noise than a lawnmower makes. Steam, not being a percussion kind of motor, is much quieter than most motors. Next slide. But also this shows you the gravel bed for this type of train is for a single track is just 4 feet. Double track here doubles that, but we mostly have only single track on this. So a small intervention, a small disruption of existing ground. Next slide. Most of our track is on level area, but this is a hilly site, so where the train swings off of where the train swings off of level area, we do have to put in
my phone is.
in towers, trestles. This is an image of typical type of trestle. Ours slightly different in terms of being single bents, which are just single double uprights as opposed to 4 square towers, but it's the same density of material. You see here, it's the same type of L-shaped bent uprights. We are going to be doing this in Corten steel. You can see is the rusting material on the right. Also show this image because this is the type of woodland in the background that we have on our site. The intention is to do as little damage as possible in the construction of this as possible, stay within really the footprint of the track itself, and not do damage outside of that area. Next slide. The last element in here is a carriage house. You can see in this 1905 map pointing out where the original Ferncliff carriage house was located. Next slide. This is just to point out another 1906 plan where it's actually written on the building that it is the carriage house. A little hard to see in this, but it does read as that. Next slide. This is pointing out the existing area. We don't know when the original carriage house was demolished, but SSS Farms has used this as their service area with a pole barn and 2 small sheds. Next slide. Okay, this is our proposal with the existing context around it. This is really it's still in development, but we're seeing it as 2 masonry walls with a sloping glass greenhouse type of glass and steel roof that comes down to grade in one corner. This building is really meant simply as a storage facility. Our client owns 2 Astor era boats and is actively looking to purchase a possible automobile or 2 that may have been one of the Astors, possibly just from that time period. This is not a tempered building. It's not for occupation. Really, there'll be minimal passive heating and cooling simply for the sake of maintaining the items that are housed in it. And next slide. Okay, just a blow up of that area, you can see there are plenty of trees around it. This is an area that's well hidden from all visibility from the core part of the property, as well as from all of our neighbors. Next slide. And Melody, this is my finish. You can see that much of what we've been trying to do here is to do restoration work in the core historic part of the property, and then propose any new things that we're proposing are in areas that were previously disturbed, whether it's the tea house area, where I just pointed out the carriage house, the mazes, that type of thing. Only new things in disturbed areas. So happy to address any of the questions you might have.
Okay, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, but I guess one question I would have at some point, it seems the only new really structural construction here from a building standpoint is just the carriage house. Primarily what's being proposed are plantings, different
Train.
landscaping.
And yes, the train does include two buildings as well. The train includes a roundhouse and car barn.
Okay.
Oh,
Will
that's
we
a,
be able
that's a
to
pretty
get that-
much new introduction.
Will we
Well,
be able to get
we did-
elevations of the structures?
Yeah, well, we do
Howard,
have
do you have
those.
elevations of the proposed structures?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Will those be provided to us?
Yes, they certainly can. We're
Can,
not aware
can,
of who did them.
Michael, can you review for me where we are in the review of this application and the entire process?
For the master plan?
Yes, and in terms of new planning board members who might be wondering where we are in this.
I think primarily what we've been doing is that as new properties have been purchased and brought into this, it's once again, every now and then it sort of starts part of the process over. As the railroad, of course, was primarily more over on the Brindlewood side of the property originally, and using part of, going along the area where part of the old actual railroad beds were. And then I think new properties were purchased, and an easement has been purchased, and I think the entire miniature railroad has been moved, entirely away from its original location on plans submitted to us, brought over to this side of the property, which is significantly different. I think through the process of the cultural landscape reports that we've had has clearly had an impact on the landscaping plans for the property. I think that a number of different aspects have been taken into account. We have just received the latest review from Charles of Carrie's plan that we can, hopefully get out to everybody. It's a hard copy, and in these times of of COVID and closed town halls, what we'd like to suggest is people would like to actually see how the review that Charles did. He made copious notes, whatnot, with Carrie's documentation. I think talking to Gretchen to make an appointment to take a look at it. We have one copy. That's what Charles worked with, and we certainly want to make it available to everybody. But it is obviously a little more difficult because of the situation we're in currently at time. But I do believe it's possible to give Gretchen a call if you would like to come in and take a look. We can certainly accommodate that. And we certainly want Carrie to see it, and Howard, Mark, you all obviously to have a look at it as well to see what other recommendations Charles might have. We're going to be submitting this overall plan.
Michael, let me just say, we have to find a way to make the report from Charles Birnbaum available to planning board members without requiring them to go to town hall to look at one copy.
I agree.
I'm not sure what that requires, but the cost of, copying that report and sending it out to people is absolutely essential to this process. We can't go in and look at one annotated copy, one by one. Whatever the cost is, we need to absorb that in the budget of the planning board.
If you're comfortable sharing it with me, I'll pick it up and I'll make however copies are necessary.
That is wonderful, Mark. Thank you very much, because, I know from talking to Charles, he's written up and annotated the entire report and has an overriding summary, which we'd all like to see. And as soon as we can see that, we can all get on board.
I think that's very generous, Mark. Thank you. I assume also copies can be made, for your group, but also want those as well.
Yeah, I'll make copies for everybody. If it's Gretchen's on, I'll stop by tomorrow morning and pick it up.
Mark, is it possible just to scan it and just?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, but
I'll scan.
let me
and
just
make
jump
hard
in.
copies.
Let me just jump in. I don't read things well scanned on my computer. I personally want to see hard copy. I know I'm old. You got to forgive me for this. So
Anybody that wants a hard copy, email me and let me know. That way Mark will know how many to make.
Yeah.
And I will scan it also. I was going to scan it and then just make copies.
I think
Yeah, Mark,
that would be very helpful.
Yeah, if you could
Sorry.
scan it,
Very
that,
helpful.
sorry, Sean. I'm just old and can't cope with it.
I like paper also, Melody.
All right. Thank you very much for dealing with my incapacities.
No, I think it's nice to have hard copy because you may wish to make notes yourself on what you're seeing. There may be further questions you'd like to have asked based on the things that Charles has brought up, and you really can't do that reading it off a computer screen very well. So I think that Mark's offer is very generous, and I think obviously if we can get hard copy, I think we all prefer that when we have a great deal that we have to review and look at. I think we've all found that looking at things on computers, oftentimes you can't get the detail. It's far more difficult to annotate on a computer screen, at least for some of us who aren't as computer savvy as others. So I think that's very good. But that's where we
I
are. We're
just
still
say this is a very complicated project. Please don't back away from poring over the maps and the pictures and everything in front of you. They're wonderful. They're very illustrative, and we have much to learn. So don't back away from getting a good thing to look at. Sorry.
But thank you, Melody. So that's where we really are in the process. We're still very much in the review. As you can see, there are a number of new elements that we haven't seen previously that are being presented here. We have had Charles has done a review again of Carrie's revised CLR, Cultural Landscape Report, which I think will be very, very helpful, and I think will help all of us. Obviously, there's been a great deal of, I think, improvement in the plan from what we first originally saw, simply because I don't believe that the information on the historical landscape was in the hands of those who need to have it. It exists, it's been out there, but it took someone to put it all together. I think Carrie and Charles between them are putting together a pretty good product for the restoration and also the development on this property. But it is going to take time, and it is complex, and there are many different elements. I know one of the other things we'd like to do, once people have had a chance, all of us, to review the copies Mark's going to make for us, I think it's probably essential to have a site visit. Even those of us who have gone on site visits here before are going to be looking at things we have not seen before, that are on positions of things that we have not seen before because they weren't part of the original plans that we were reviewing. So I think we're going to be continuing this public hearing to March 15th, but I'm hoping in the interim we'll be able to read over the reports, bring questions forward if we have them, and also very important is set up the site visit for the property prior to that, so that hopefully everyone will have seen the property, been able to go over what's being proposed, see it, physically. And at that point, I think maybe we'll be in a much better position to really focus in on any questions we still have, any things we need more information about, any problems we have with some of the things that are being proposed, what those problems might be, and how the applicant's representatives might be able to respond to those. I think we're in a position now of still gathering information, and I think we just have to sort of see where that takes us at this point. But certainly welcome any other comments from other members of the planning board or from the applicant's representatives about the direction that we're going in. It is a type 1 action under seeker, by the way. So, yes, Mark.
Just for the new board members, just to clarify so this process we're going through now is for approval of the master plan. And so the idea, and we've been doing this since, gosh, I think 2017 for the various projects that have been undertaken for the various properties here. So the purpose of this is to look at the overall development of these three properties and to come to a seeker determination, just a seeker determination for the master plan. Just note that all the the specific details, the improvements that Howard mentioned through his presentation, those are going to require individual application to the planning board for site plan, special permit, review, and actually some of the things being proposed are also going to require application to the zoning board of appeals. So this is, once again, and so the reason for doing this master plan is so for each one of these individual applications, we don't have to keep going through seeker. We're going to go through seeker once and then make the individual applications for for the various improvements that are being proposed for the project. Well, that's it. And one other thing I'll note, I will, if any of the planning board members need any additional copies of any of the documents that Howard and I have produced, please just get to Gretchen. I'll get you those copies immediately. I did make multiple copies already, but if you need anything else, please get to Gretchen and I'll take care of that. And then also I'll pick up that cultural landscape report from Gretchen tomorrow, and I'll scan it and make copies of that also. That's
Thank
it.
you, Mark. That's
I know I have limited time.
very, very helpful and appreciated. And I think the point you're making is important that people realize a master plan approval is not something you then take and get a building permit with. It's to basically approve the overall plan to make sure everything for both the applicant's sake and ours is coordinated together so they know how the pieces are going to fit together. But then when each different piece as of the things that Howard was describing to us are actually, they want to implement and prepare to do that, it comes back to the planning board for specific site plan approval and any special permits that might be involved with a specific work or a wetland permit. Once those approvals are granted, then they're in a position to go get the building permit to actually implement that specific portion of what we approved under the master plan. So that's how that works.
Michael, may I remind you that you're going to refer this entire process also to HAPAC, and so we'll need copies for that group as well.
Yes, the 5 members, yes.
6.
6? 6, okay,
Karen.
yes. Thank you.
Are copies of what? Do you want the cultural landscape report or the master plan, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, everything, Mark, should go to HAPAC.
Okay.
Mark, this is Jim. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. So for those on the board and those on the call, the planning board has taken lead agency on this for seeker, and we sent out a notice of intent with the paperwork for that. We did an update on that because there was a new AAF and things have changed. And Mark, you got that from me, and that is either gone out or is going out.
Oh, it's all out, Jim. I actually I emailed Gretchen all the receipts of the I UPS'd it to all those agents, involved in interested agencies.
Okay.
Already.
Great. So that's good. They get 30 days to review. So just, going back to Michael's process thing. So they get 30 days to come back with comments. I think we only got one last time. I don't expect too much this time around. You said you provide elevations. I think that's great. And Howard, on your document, I think if planning board members want a copy of what we just went through today, let Gretchen know that since it does have those details. And Howard, I was wondering if you can provide either like a cover sheet that labels the sheets that have the changes on them, or maybe a list of what the changes are, because it's kind of intermixed with the history in there, which I think is good. Yeah. But if you can call out which pages detail, those specific changes, I think that would be good, not only for now, but for the record in the future, so we can quickly reference that. Okay. Maybe just a cover sheet to what you have would be simple enough, because I think it's all in there. Yeah, I think that was it for me at the moment. Thanks.
I think that covers it.
Okay, well then what I would like to do is ask for a motion to approve continuing this public hearing to March 15th at 6:50 p.m.
So moved, Melody.
Second?
Second, Sean.
Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Mark, Howard, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item. and that is the town referral we got for the country into local law. We asked for additional information at our last meeting before we felt we'd be in a position to consider a approval, a recommendation on whether or not to approve country into. We did recommend with 2 changes we thought were a good idea, that the town board, if they made the changes we suggested, adopt the definitions for hospitality, bedrooms, guest rooms, suites, and all. I don't believe that's happened yet, but that was the recommendation. Now we're back again with country into. Did you all get a chance to read the letter that Michael Zarin on behalf of the town board sent in response to the questions that we asked? Or perhaps I should say, did anyone not get a chance to read those? Okay. Frankly, in reading them, my own personal feeling is they didn't really answer our questions, and a couple of things were put in there which I think could be somewhat problematic. Item number 6 and number 7 appear to be delegating authority to the planning board to make zoning law interpretations and things of that sort, which legally we're not entitled to do. We're not allowed to do. That's the zoning enforcement officer and the zoning board of appeals that does that. Basically, what the gist of the letter was, as I read it, was that in the opinion of the town board, they felt that there would be no negative impacts on environment, the village, community water, natural resources, things like that. The planning board, whenever we get an application, we don't work with opinion. We insist upon studies done if necessary, upon facts, upon things that we can really read, point to, and analyze. I think the town board is trying to do the best it can with this. I think there's still have a number of questions too. It has been suggested to me that there may be some rewriting of the amendment for country Inn 2. What that might be, I don't know, but that there's still some discussion going on. So that's sort of where I am right now. I still don't feel that we can make a recommendation in favor of the amendment because I don't really feel our questions were answered, and I still don't really understand personally the potential impacts. There may be no negative impacts whatsoever, but I do have some questions about it. But that's my position at the present time, but I really like to hear from the rest of you.
Michael, I tuned into the town board meeting when this was discussed, and there were 2 things that I noted. One was, as you said, I heard, I think it was Elizabeth, say that there would be some rewriting of this material before the next town board meeting. That was one. And the other was what I saw as a conflict between what the town board is seeing as this membership club and what perhaps the applicant Grassmere, who was represented by Victoria Polidoro, what they see. The material that we received talks about members having the exclusive use of one restaurant and one bar. And Ms. Polidoro, as I remember her comments, they were that what Grass would want would be the public would have the use of one restaurant and one bar and would not have access to any of the other amenities unless, of course, they were staying there overnight, in which case they would have access to all of the amenities. So it just seemed to me, I mean, Grassmere is involved in this because Victoria Polidoro was there and made a comment. And I believe that some of this is responding to what Grassmere sees as their needs. And this just seemed to be a big conflict in my mind in terms of how people are viewing this membership club.
Thank you, Edna. Other comments? Okay.
I'll just ask a
Um,
quick question, just to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you, Edna, for also commenting on and connecting dots of what's happening between meetings. I think that's helpful. What is the concern for you that you don't like the proposal of only one, bar restaurant open to the public, or just how that specifically relates to that file? In other words,
If you're talking to me, Delise, I have no particular opinion. I'm simply pointing out what I see as being a conflict here. I mean, it was, in my mind, a rather extreme conflict.
Would it be fair to characterize it as that perhaps the aspects of what the membership club would entail are still up in the air, that the town board still really hasn't decided how they want that to go? They haven't nailed that down yet?
That sure seems true to me.
Okay.
our question for them, if I recall correctly, was for them to define what some, right, meant when they were referencing some, food and beverage facilities or something.
They use the term various. But to me, I have no idea what it is they want, first of all, because I think it's unnecessary to write something that's ambiguous. If the town board feels that members should have exclusive use of one restaurant and one bar, that's what they should say, and then people can agree or disagree. But don't leave it up in the air with a term like various.
Yeah, I think part of the problem that I have is there's too much ambiguity at the present time without specific parameters being laid out here that will have to define what a country in two is. I know that when we were first doing this way back when, a country in two was seen as basically a type of a hospitality operation that people come into Rhinebeck, go to the county fairs, use the restaurants, things of that sort. There would also be some amenities which one might associate with a country inn, such as horseback riding, things like that. I could see swimming, things of that sort. What we certainly did not foresee at that time, and I think it's something that's going to have to be given serious consideration, is something that to some extent almost becomes a subset of the village of Rhinebeck, where you don't just have a restaurant to serve your guests, your overnight guests, things of that sort, but you have a series of restaurants and eating facilities on the property, which then potentially could also be open to the public. You have some other amenities which we've seen in earlier plans for Grassmere. I don't know if they're still part of the plans because we're obviously still waiting to get a final plans from them, such as things as a theater, which frankly both restaurants and theaters are not permitted in the town of Rhinebeck. The ones that exist are grandfathered in, but they are not permitted uses within the town of Rhinebeck at this time.
You mean outside?
So there are a number of questions which are coming up as the town board has been trying to review this and trying to determine how they want to deal with this. I don't want us to say that we disagree with the need to define country in two and some of these different aspects. I think Edna's point is that yes, they need to be defined, but they need to be defined in a precise way so that we actually know what's being proposed. Because when this comes before us, we have to decide whether or not it's appropriate, whether it's suitable for our community. We have to find reasons to approve or disapprove it. But the only way we can do that is we know exactly what we're looking at. And I think at this point in time, neither the applicants who might wish to do a country in two, nor the town board is fully aware of exactly what they're trying to do with this, what they want this to entail.
So Michael,
recommendation.
Sorry.
Yes.
I just was going to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were done.
No.
The initiative lies now with the town board, does it not, with regard to the definitions, the development of the language and so forth, correct? And so they come back and forth to the planning board for input, but the initiative lies with them, and that is not yet clarified, either Edna or Delise, if you guys were at the last meeting about it. It just looks to me like, how can we respond to what isn't defined? Just saying.
It is the town board's responsibility, yes. They're the ones responsible for writing the legislation, and then when it gets it to the point where they are comfortable with it, to adopt or not adopt, yes, it is there. We're simply asked to advise from a planning standpoint what we feel the impact might be of modifications, amendments to the zoning law. But to do that, we really need precise information to make an
There you
informed
go.
recommendation to the planning board. And my personal view is we don't have that information.
Okay. I remember you saying that at the last meeting also. It feels to me like we're missing information to respond effectively. And so maybe we wait until we get our questions answered. And sorry, Jim.
I was just gonna say, timing wise, I don't believe we can wait the 60-day period the planning board has for review. If the town board holds the planning board to it or decides to move forward in such time, that 60 days, I believe, is up either at the end of this month or the beginning of March. I don't know the exact date. I'd have to go back and check, but I don't know that we're going to make it to another meeting before the timeline's up. So,
but there remains open issues that, as Michael points out, we've asked for answers to, and they have not responded. Am I correct?
There was a response, but I don't believe they answered the questions. That's the problem.
Well,
I have with it.
we are, in the absence of information, are we required to respond, or can we choose not to respond?
There you go.
If we do not respond according to the law, zoning law, a lack of response on our part is taken as a recommendation to approve the amendment.
But
So we
didn't
have to
you?
respond in
So
some fashion.
what?
But you did respond and asked further questions, and they did not. Correct?
We
Well,
did
I
respond.
I think they think they did respond, correct, Jim?
Well, I think they do think that. They definitely think they did. And
Again,
I don't believe. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Denise?
is there an option to respond in a way that says my God, this is complicated, right? Like
Yes.
Something to the effect of we can't respond because, I mean, we've said this before, we don't have sufficient information.
Right.
Can
You
we-
did
can we
say that before.
Can we specify what people of the planning board feel like was not answered? Can we have a further dialogue that's a little more specific than we don't feel like it's answered and it's very vague?
No, we did that. We did that.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, to their response, to just further the conversation in a more detailed way. Alternatively, which again, this may totally not be procedural, but I'm just thinking from like business sense of myself of how to keep things happening quickly. Is there no possibility, and again, not just with this file in general, for just a group meeting for like just conversation, even if it's public? Why can't that happen? I feel like so much of this could happen in a communication.
You would think so, wouldn't you? That would be a very logical response, but I'm not sure.
But Jim, don't you speak to both sides?
yes.
On a fairly regular basis?
Poor
So-
Jim.
Yes, I work for both sides.
So can you not, you
But
fix it.
Yes, absolutely. No, we have provided them with questions. They provided back the answers, as Michael said. I think the timeline is going to run out. I think, at this point, I think the planning board, in my opinion, should make a recommendation, whatever it is, whether it's in favor, not in favor, or we can't make a recommendation. I think staying silent, as Michael said, means it's an implied approval, and I don't think I'm hearing that, generally speaking, from the members at this time.
Then
So
why don't you say we can't make a recommendation because there are open issues and they haven't answered them?
if that's what the planning board wants, I can type that up and submit that back. And any of these that I do, I I clear through Michael before they go, obviously if I make tweaks, but yeah, certainly that can be the response. But I think
Kathy, make that motion.
there you go.
I forgot what I said, but I so moved it.
No
Can
recommend.
I just want to, I don't want to overly complicate this, but
Then don't.
personally, although I'm trying to, I don't know. So like I had a couple questions initially, which I still am very curious as to how, like how did we get to the 150? And that was like, I feel like there were certain questions. I don't personally think that there's anything not provided that I'm really, really frustrated about not understanding. I feel like I have a lot of information. It doesn't mean I won't take more, because I gladly would, but maybe it would be useful for people to, rather than just saying, I don't think I have enough, like what are the specifics that we want that they don't feel or wasn't achieved in their last response? I'm just curious what those things are.
I don't know how we got to 150.
And can they just answer that question? It's like,
and the answer was that in their opinion, the 44% increase in occupancy would not have a significant impact on the site water traffic.
Based on
the number.
By the way, Michael, the village is not mentioned any place in
No, they're not. And that's
my
the
primary
problem is,
my primary
Go ahead, Ed.
concern is that something is going to be put into the law on Country Inn 2 without true information, study, whatever, that could have in the long run a detrimental impact on the viability of the village, one of the crucial elements of our comprehensive plan. And that's why I'm so concerned that we understand how these decisions were made. So that's number one. And number two, I heard that something is going to be rewritten. This is going to be rewritten. So if we were to say that we're not in favor of adopting it as now written, I think that would make sense, right? Because they have said they're going to rewrite it.
Well, what happens is the town board will take under advisement any comments they get. So they've received comments from you. I believe they've received comments from applicants, both on the hospitality definitions, and I believe this as well. So they'll take those comments under advisement and then decide if they're going to make, any changes or tweaks to what's been put in front of you. That's kind of how the process, that's how the process goes.
Right, Jim. And if we don't say anything, then they just don't take any input from us and move forward regardless. Correct?
Well, I mean, the planning board has made, the planning board has submitted significant comments / questions, and those were put in, and then the responses were provided back. As Michael's noted, if the planning board doesn't say anything, like Michael said, I believe it's a deemed approval. So I just think based on the 60-day timeline, and we have now submitted comments, I think twice. I just think we need to kind of come to a determination on where the board feels they are with the law that's been put in front of you based on the information you have at hand, and whatever that, recommendation is, your thoughts are on it, I think is kind of where we go. And then, we'll see where the town board goes with it from there. But statutorily, I think our 60 days are up before our next meeting. So I'd recommend something, whatever you're comfortable with. Just a decision, whatever that decision is.
It's ridiculous.
Elise, my primary concern is that their justification for what they've done is that in their opinion, and what I want to know is what is that opinion based on? An applicant comes before us and they can say in their opinion, my application is great and will have no harm. We don't accept that. We say, okay, what's that based on? We require studies in many cases, professional work by engineers, biologists, things of that sort. Opinions don't count for anything here. Fact is what we work on, and fact is what we have to work on. And we asked the town board, okay, what did you base these decisions on for the 150 people? For the other things, for the decision about the membership club, they decided that, well, that's just an operational. They didn't feel that needed to be defined or given any sort of parameters of how it functions. And I personally disagree. And in two items, number 6 and number 7 in the response, they were telling the planning board that we could interpret the zoning law to determine whether or not certain accessory uses would be appropriate. We cannot do that by law. That's the zoning enforcement officer and the ZBA's role. The planning board cannot interpret the zoning law. We have to go with what's written. So the town board really needs to write down what are acceptable accessory uses. That's not our role, and legally we can't do it. Many of us on the planning board over the years have gone to great lengths to ensure that what we do is.
Oh, Lord. Okay, Jim, he's gone for a while. Jim or Melody, whoever, we need to come up with something to say back in the window of time that we have left to us. Who's going to recommend what we're saying back? What happened to my motion? Did it die? Guess it
I
did.
hope not.
Oh, there you are.
I just,
Chairman?
if I could just finish what I was going to say. Generally, things, when they go against planning boards, the objections often are based on technicalities, things of that sort. And you have to be very careful to make sure everything you do, you can substantiate and it is factual. And I just believe the town board owes us, if we're going to make a recommendation and go on the record, they owe us that same level of information to explain why they're doing something. So if someone asks me, well, why is it 150? Right now, I can't answer that. It may be
Why don't we
perfectly
ask
all
for
right.
it?
I can't answer
We
that.
did. We
So-
did. We
We
have.
did.
Can I just
All
ask
right.
one more, just question about procedure? Hypothetically, no matter what gets approved, whatever gets approved, once the law is now approved, and we now get a file on our desk, though, we have every right to ask for environmental reports, whatever we want to substantiate the file and to feel comfortable before we approve it, regardless of the number of rooms, whether it's 40, 50, 100, we still have that right, right?
Right. I
Yes, we
think
do.
that's what the letter says back here. It says basically the planning board reserves the right to reduce the density based on studies and empirical evidence, right? So does it matter
Yes.
what that number is if we're going to find studies?
Yeah, I mean, that is empirically right, but it isn't always practically right.
It does.
All right, well, then what
matter.
should this say instead? Melody?
Oh, I don't know. Don't maybe go down that road tonight, but there are.
Well, we don't have much time left. We got to go down the road.
Chairman, could I address the 150 bedroom issue?
No.
Who is that?
Victoria, no.
It's
you
No,
cannot.
it's not a public
Victoria,
meeting.
it's not
Victoria,
appropriate.
I just want, okay, I just
No,
want to
I'm
clarify.
sorry.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Victoria, you may not speak at this meeting. If you were to speak, there are people who oppose this, we know already, who have spoken to the town board. And that is where your comments and other people's comments on this should be, is to the town board. We're simply being asked for, from a planning standpoint, do we recommend or not recommend the adoption of this amendment?
We're
And it's from
having a
planning
planning
standpoint. What
board
do we say?
conversation, not a
Okay,
hearing.
Not a
okay, fine.
public
So
hearing.
where do we stand? Michael, whoever, Jim,
My
somebody.
feeling is that I think that the original thing that I think Kathy said was that at this time, we do not feel we are in a position to make an informed recommendation to the town board on whether or not to adopt this amendment. If we want, we can also add the language. The town board will have to use their own judgment in determining whether or not, as we do with the ZBA. I just don't want us to not be on the record. I think it's important we be on the record as to what we feel. And first of all, we have to decide exactly what the consensus of what we feel is. But we do
So-
need to take some action. Otherwise,
So if we
no
take
action
it-
means
if
that we recommend adoption.
If we take an action tonight, no matter what it is, we are conforming with the law. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
This
And
is
those
a
are
this is a referral. So whatever you want to do. I mean, there's no rule. The town board. This is a town board action. So they're referring it to you for comment if you have comment. So there's no legal requirement. All that really is a legal requirement is a 60-day statute where we get cut off, legally.
Okay.
But no, it's entirely up to the planning board what you want to, how you want to respond and whatever. I just recommend we make some response, whatever that may be, whatever you're comfortable with.
So you could refer for a request for additional information?
They didn't,
I think what Jim's
You did
point
that.
is, and I think he may be correct, that we're not going to get additional information in time for our next meeting to not be past the 60 days. In which
Well, we
case
already-
then, by not taking any action tonight, it will be taken as a recommendation to adopt the amendment.
Oh, that was
Well,
my.
and we did already submit, we did already submit the questions, both for hospitality and country and two. And then, did get, we got back a response from the town board. So I feel like that's how the process, in my opinion, that's how the process is played out, and that's where we stand. And that now it's
that's the end of it. Is that your opinion?
my opinion is at this point, it'd be good for the planning board to make a decision.
We did.
I agree with Jim. We need to, by resolution, determine what we wish to do in terms of a recommendation referring to adoption of this amendment. So if someone would like to make a make a motion for a resolution, the floor is open.
And that's very often how this happens. Someone can make a motion, and then we vote on it. And if it passes, it moves forward. If it fails, we go back and talk again.
I don't understand what you just said.
Then we vote on our feeling, yes or no about it? Is that what
I think that's what he said.
Yes.
Michael, make a motion.
Are you for it or against it?
But basically, the motion I would like to make is that the planning board believes it is not in a position to make an informed recommendation to the town board on the potential planning impacts of this amendment, given the information that we currently have before us, and therefore chooses not to make a positive or a negative recommendation to the town board to adopt this to adopt or not adopt this amendment to the zoning law.
All right.
But and just to clarify, but then we're saying we're not responding, in which case they will no longer ask us for comment.
They've already
Well,
got all the
they-
comments we're giving them.
Yeah, but
They
ignored them.
we'll hit our 60 days and therefore we didn't choose.
Delise,
For
I
or
think
against,
it's possible that if they actually rewrite this, they have to resubmit it to us.
Okay,
Because
got
the
it.
recommendation that we're giving is based upon what's before us, not what might be before us if they redo something, change something, add something, delete something. So we may see it
Michael, can
again,
we
yeah.
vote on what you just said?
If I get a second.
Oh, who seconded?
Well,
I'll do
I made
it.
the motion. I made the motion. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Very good. Is there any further discussion or shall we vote?
Let's vote.
Okay, we'll vote. What I'll do is I'll poll the board so that everyone can be put down for what they believe so that no one has to be just subsumed within the overall vote. And I vote yes in favor of the resolution. Kathy,
Yes.
Melody,
Aye.
Delise?
Want to
Delete.
clarify, we're voting for more information, right?
No, we're voting that because we're not going to get the information in time to
If we're
vote
not
again
adapting
unless
the
they rewrite
information,
this.
as long, and I'm sorry for keep going back and forth, but if we're having to choose yes or no on what they're presenting, that's very different.
No,
Is that
what
what
we
you're
are
asking?
voting on, what we are voting on is saying we don't have information sufficient to make a recommendation to adopt or not to adopt.
I'm
That's what we're
fine.
voting on.
I'm fine with saying that we don't have sufficient information.
Okay,
That would be a
Edna?
yes, right?
that would be a yes.
Say it.
Aye.
Edna,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
very good, thank you.
I thought he moved to Poughkeepsie.
No, you're not.
Michael,
do
can I
not
ask
be
one further question?
surprised if the-
Okay, never mind.
Absolutely.
Go. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, Delise, absolutely. No, of course you can ask a question.
I don't think it probably even matters. I was just gonna say, like, how important is it to? It doesn't matter. Just keep going.
Oh, okay.
Let's just keep going.
As I said, it's possible we may see this again because if they do make changes and if they're significant changes, I believe by law, they are required to resubmit it to us because obviously we will not have reviewed it. And there could be elements that we would not have reviewed. But I think it's more likely that the town board will go ahead and adopt this. Although there may be still some questions on the town board, so they may not be comfortable yet either.
Okay.
Anyway,
Jim, real
that's
quick,
all
just
I
to
had for
clarify,
tonight.
no matter what
Yes.
we say, the town board can still make its own decision, correct?
It is a town board.
Absolutely.
It is a town board decision. Absolutely positively town board decision. That's why the comments we received, and we do want to note, you all received a memo from Kristen Green with comments. Want to make sure you note that for the record. So you've all received comments. You've heard each other talk. It is referred to you, but this is 100% a town board action. It's just a referral for your for planning board comments.
Okay.
The town board is not bound by anything we recommend. It's strictly, they are the only ones who have the right to decide to adopt or not adopt.
Got it.
Is there anything
Thank you.
else tonight?
No.
All right, could I hear a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes. I so move.
Second.
Second,
Very
Elise.
good.
You ruled, Elise.
Yeah, very good. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Listen, thank you all very much. These are some difficult issues to deal with, and I think you guys really take it seriously, and I think you do a very, very good job, and I appreciate it. This is a very good town board, and it's lucky because we have some very significant issues ahead of us that other communities don't face. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. I wish you